for the last presentation of the day will be Jay Stevens, and he'll be talking about how VR is helping solve a $30 billion problem. Jay, come on in.
Hey, how you doing, John?
I'm doing good. How are you? Look at you trimmed up there.
Right. This is, you know, I had a whole thing I was going to come on with polar bears in the background with a tube on and a mug and everything, just to pause for effect because it's so cold up here. But yep, it's all good. Well, thank you everybody for joining me. I know we're a little bit over, but great to see everybody. Thanks for coming along. Am I able to share? Okay. Obviously, everybody can see this thumbs up. This is just me saying thank you very much to all the amazing presenters before me. Fabulous job, really appreciate it. Lots of great ideas from those and lots of great execution. So I just wanted to say thank you from my DPA. It's been an honor just to partake and watching you guys do what you do. And of course, thanks to ELB for hosting this. And thankfully, you put me at the very, very end. So all these awesome presentations in front of me have done all the work, and then so this should be a slam dunk. So thank you. So who am I? I guess my name is Jay Stevens. I am the CEO and co-founder of Damage Prevention Academy here in lovely Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Somebody mentioned Canada a couple times and cold weather and potentially being in Italy, and that's where I would like to be right now as well. So we are primarily focused around the damage prevention, safety, and utility protection space. So we are essentially subject matter experts. We work with a hardworking group of fearless developers, tech experts, writers, strategic innovators to create excellent e-learning, this action-oriented e-learning and technology solutions that we deliver to our clients has measurable results.
Okay, can I just jump in for a second? Your audio is kind of muddled a little bit, and I don't know if the microphone is tucked down and are you using that mic?
Yeah, hang on a second. Let me just mute for a second, just double check. How is it? Is it better now, John?
It's better now. You can see the microphone's closer in front of your mouth. It was very muddled.
Yeah, it's just strange. It's always, maybe it's just banging against my face. So anyway, we create training technology solutions that measurably improve results. Why we're good at what we do, we just create amazing partnerships with amazing organizations and develop really, really cool products. So today we're going to be talking about a $30 billion problem, and this $30 billion problem is something that is a very serious problem, and we want to kind of discuss that and bring that to attention before we begin. So what's the scope of the problem? So the problem that we're trying to solve with using VR technologies is utility damages, the cost of those damages, as well as the safety and financial impacts of those. So there's approximately, this is old data, older, about 100 billion feet or 20 million miles of underground utilities in the United States alone, which is about one football field's length for every man, woman, child. And then every one of those utilities is very essential to what we do and what we do in society. And every 9 minutes, one of those is damaged during an excavation, which often leads to injuries, death, and other things, which results in a $30 billion damage bill every single year over and over again. Now, the $30 billion, it accounts, I just want to check John's audio still good? Hopefully still good. The $30 billion estimate accounts for direct costs like facility repair, indirect costs like property damage, equipment replacement, and things like that. So it's increased medical bills, insurance costs. I mean, the list goes on. Over the last 5 years, those damages have plateaued, but the same leading root causes seem to be plaguing this industry and causing the vast majority of damages time and time again. So basically, let's face it, our traditional training and general awareness just isn't having the desired impact that we want in this space, and we need to solve this problem. So how do we measurably, how do we make a measurable impact with the training, actually reduce damages and save lives? That's how we're using virtual reality. But before I begin, what I'll say is that although the $30 billion is, we put a lot of focus on the money, Damage Prevention Academy, we're focused on the individual. We are a safety first organization. Our desire is to reduce damages on a national level, but ultimately sending workers home safe to their families every single day is our primary mission. That said, we had a series of videos created for the training course that I'm going to show you today. Just tons of high quality videos with a lot of very, very well-known individuals. And I want to start this presentation with about a 3-minute video, safety video, because it really drives home the message of why this course is built. And this video is actually inside of the training course as well. As you navigate through the site, you'll come across this video. But it's a powerful message about safety. It's a powerful message about damage prevention, and it really resonates. So here, without further ado.
And I ended up jackhammering into these power lines that were beneath this concrete, and poof, seconds like that changed my life forever. Hi, my name is Cliff Meidel. I'm a 2-time Olympian and an 811 ambassador. During the day, I spend a lot of my time focusing on the importance of safety and being able to get the boots on the ground and the consumer to be able to go out there and be safe at all times. So when I was instructed to work that morning, we were doing some excavation work around this area, and I was working and using a jackhammer at the time. And my jackhammer, when I was jackhammering, actually pierced 4 power lines that were beneath this concrete, and each one of the power lines had 4,160 volts. I couldn't tell you if I was dead or alive. I remember just waking up 16 hours later, and it was almost like this dream. And here my mom and my dad were standing next to my hospital bed wearing these white coats. And I remember feeling this enormous pain in my chest, and I really didn't know what it was. And that is when my mother had told me that I was involved in this severe construction accident. What had happened was that I've kind of got blown off of the jackhammer, and then I slid back down into the ditch area where my legs came in contact with the jackhammer for a second time. So here was this energized jackhammer standing vertically, and my legs ended up getting sucked into the jackhammer where I was locked onto this thing for several seconds. So I experienced various different exit wounds. I had a lot of ground burns on my body, but most of the damages was to my knees, where I made contact with the jackhammer for the second time, and it kind of sucked into the jackhammer, and I had over a third of the knee compartment that was disintegrated. That means the entire bone structure on both my left knee and my right knee were completely burned away. I had 2 toes on my right foot that had blown actually through the construction boot because electricity is extremely powerful. And then I had various different burns on the back of my head, all up and down my back. I had major holes on my left and right shoulder blades, but most of the damage at that time, those were some of the long-term damages. The most critical damage was at the time was my heart stopped. I ended up having a cardiac arrest. If I can go out there and inspire one person to be able to work safe and be able to dig safe and be able to make that contact to 811, that is where my passion lies, and where I can say, yes, I've done my job. When they've got that shovel in their hand and they're going to go ahead and put it in the ground, I want them to really think, did they properly use the right steps in order to make a safe excavation? And that's what I ask the worker that's out there, or the contractor, or the owner, is to be able to make sure that they're making it safe for everybody. So before you stick that shovel in the ground, make sure that you use the proper safe digging techniques of being able to call 811, because it's all about safety. And when you don't implement safety, the other side of the coin is where you do not want to go, is when you're involved in an incident, because as my experience, quite often people can die from things like that if you're not safe. So dig safe and make that contact to 811.
very powerful story. And that's what we have found very effective in serving the space that we, create these trainings for, is telling a story and a narrative that really resonates with the worker. And that's one of them. That's one of a series of about 20 to 30 videos that we produce. Well, actually, it was produced primarily through our clients in California and Nevada. They have been an excellent customer and support in creating these videos. So they were able to make connections with people like Cliff Meidel and Tim Kennedy, who we'll show you next, to create these excellent videos. So let's dive into why VR for Damage Prevention Academy is our primary focus moving forward. So our industry has challenges, clearly, as we just talked about. It's a $30 billion problem every year, but we also have workers dying fairly regularly. We've had more deaths in trench-related cave-ins this year than last year already, significantly more. And this is all related to excavation safety and utility damage prevention. So I believe that VR can help us solve this. So the real issue here is each state or province, no matter where you are in the United States or Canada, we all have different laws, rules, regulations. There's different distances or tolerance zones in which you can excavate near a utility. And there's also different enforcement actions that can be taken against you if you hit one of these lines. And there's fines in the hundreds of thousands in some states, whereas in other states, there's fines of just minimum amounts. So there's a lot of law. I guess really what I'm saying is there's a lot of law and rules around the actual excavation in the utility, but there's no law like around mandatory training for the guys doing the excavating. It's suggested, and that's our moment. We don't this lack of having a mandatory training required for people who are excavating around these utilities, or mandatory knowledge. It leads to obviously damages and injuries like the one you just heard of, but it also leads to lower learner engagement and course completion. Because let's face it, if my employer says I don't have to take this, why am I taking it? So it's got to be good enough to invest my time to take it. Whereas if you see a traditional course, maybe the NHS would be a good example. If it's required training, you're going to get a near 100% completion ratio. And I mean, I would hope I could go to a hospital and have fully trained staff looking after myself or my family, but you can't believe that an excavator operating a giant piece of mechanical equipment next to a high pressure gas line in the community wouldn't require that same level of due diligence of training. So it kind of makes us really think that we need to do a better job. And so for now, the laws aren't changing. So we have to change the way we're training. And we're using VR to do that, to of course, boost, learner retention, boost learner engagement, course completion, and not to mention by doing that, we can hopefully reduce injuries and utility damages along the way. So scenario VR is the tool we choose because it's most applicable to this industry, and I'll get to that a little bit more after. But then versus now, we're still driving this up. But if you see a comparison ratio of the completion rate from 2018 to 2019 through 2020 to 2022, we're seeing a pretty significant amount of increased course completion, which is also increased learner engagement, and that's specifically related to this VR course. So again, VR is helping, or scenario VR is helping us change that there. VR in general, yes, but scenario VR specifically. So what we talk about is, many of you have seen this slide before, but VR and AR are completely changing the rules of the game for us. And we feel that by adopting a virtual reality training, you can create training that's not only more engaging, but also more effective in passive methods. So when we say highly engaging, what we're really saying is it's like unparalleled knowledge retention. We know the stats, we're all in the VR space. So maybe not everybody here is in the VR space, but it provides an unparalleled knowledge retention and engagement level that you don't see in your passive learning. It's also become more affordable. Headsets agreed are more affordable, but with the availability of smartphones, VR and AR have never been more affordable and in the hands of so many different users. Cost effective, I mean, I talk about this a lot, is VR is the most cost effective method for simulating any training scenario, hands down. I mean, there might be some that disagree with me, but from our side, it's the most cost effective way to put anybody in a training scenario. And then, of course, we're learning is 3 times more effective. Learners perform 3 times better compared to passive learning, and the proof is in the pudding. Of course, you see some of these stats here, which we threw in here, but VR trained students scored 233% higher than students using passive learning. And of course, 252% of VR trained students completed 252% more learning steps than students using passive learning. And that's an amazing stat, given that the way that you develop your course, if the users engage, they feel engaged in that space, you're not really thinking of how much time this is taking, like somebody watching a PowerPoint. They're actually clicking on everything, they're engaging with different things, they're completing those objectives, and those are those learning steps that we're referring to. And just some other ones that I thought that would be really cool to talk about today is some impressive stats I just saw yesterday. I mean, I've seen these before, but again, this is just something that kind of sparked my interest, is that according to Chaos Theory Games, VR training reduces the occurrences of workplace injuries by 43%. Like, unbelievable. Think of the story of the video I played earlier with Milo, and let alone the sheer fact that man was able to overcome that crazy injury and become a 2-time Olympian. Just unbelievable. Testament to his character. But imagine being able to reduce trench-related deaths every year by 43% because of something like this, or any major safety stat that's out there. It's just enormous. VR training, actually, according to Front Core, VR training has a retention rate of 75%, beating out lectures, which are 5%, reading at 10%, audio-visual learning at 20%. I mean, that's another big one. And then lastly, this one was really kind of, light bulb moment for me. Police officers who receive virtual reality training are 2.7 times more likely to participate in successful missions. Critical piece of technology that we can leverage more types of training across different sectors in order to assist different areas. So that's kind of some pretty impressive stats that we come across. So, why scenario VR? Well, we use scenario VR for a number of different reasons, but let's talk about the fact that we can develop VR content with the speed and ease on this platform, and that's the primary reason. But it's not just because of that; it's also because of our audience. We know our audience, and we know that this tool has a delivery mechanism that others don't, that allows us to use it in our space. So let's talk about that for a second. Excuse me. So this is Taylor. She's kind of a big deal. So I'll tell you a little story about Taylor. She's always knew she wanted to have a career in the trades. After graduation, she began working in construction. She found a passion for all things excavation, all things earth moving, all things, basically just loved like massive piece of equipment and moving dirt, and eventually started her own company. Now, Taylor has a lot of projects, and her small crew of 8 excavators, heavy equipment operators, and all these guys are always busy. Like I'm saying always busy. Many of you know, like during COVID, post-pandemic, we've got a lot of infrastructure spending globally. So you see construction activity in every corner, especially in North America. I'm not too familiar. I'm sure it's the same over on the other side of in the UK and other areas where they're just spending enormous amounts of money on infrastructure projects, which has created this massive issue of, workers, training workers, and just being behind on every job that you do. So getting her team properly trained to keep them safe out there and do a proper job is priority number one. But having equipment operators out in the field, like on this big grader behind me, to take training on a headset would be like moving mountains, is what that would be like. It's a very, very significant challenge, because you're out in different parts of some big cities. You've got some ability to have some connectivity, where in others, in rural settings where you've got almost no signal strength, especially, and then having devices to be able to distribute those is a challenge. So what we found is that although VR headsets are more affordable, they're accessible, but broad deployment of that device and broad deployment of this type of training on that device, it just isn't there yet. It's a big challenge, but we're getting there. But that's why DPA is focused on creating training using Scenario VR as the platform to develop these training programs and designed specifically for use. And so I think I mentioned in the NHS is that this training is all designed for PC, laptop, tablet, and smartphone. And then we deploy that to our world-class LMS to increase worker safety, reduce damages, and, of course, increase the rate of VR adoption in the community. Because ultimately, especially with our target audience, we often run into a barrier or a lack of wanting to adopt a headset. So again, by doing it this way, we can increase the adoption in the excavation community. So let's talk about some examples here. So this training course that we're going to demo today, we shot this with our clients, in partnership with our clients. We shot this in Las Vegas because we couldn't do it in California. So you'll see all these images here, basically and every image used in the course and every video is primarily shot in those areas. So again, in the upper left, and we'll go through some scenarios in a few minutes, but ultimately on the upper left, you have a work site where we've got a simple kind of drag and drop, like trying to find, the proper personal protective equipment, because that's important for them to know as soon as they get to the work site. We've used, as I mentioned previously, we've used a number of different videos inside of our program because, again, in the way that we tell stories and we talk about excavation safety, we outline key concepts and topics in those videos in short micro components so that the learners are getting the information that they need in a more digestible format. And then again, we're taking rules, regulations, and law and really driving that message into a package that they can better understand. Then we use, of course, inbuilt Q&A as we show up here in the upper right to kind of monitor their progress, track their understanding of knowledge, and then just kind of test them throughout building their knowledge base and retention of key information so that when they finish that module, they take a quiz that's tracked in our LMS that then moves them to the next stage. And then lastly, here at the bottom, we've got an image of a work site where we're going to show a live example of this shortly of what's called white lining or pre-marking of a work site, where the worker would then have to, prior to digging, contact 811 and white line the job site. So there's a couple of different things that we use. And of course, and these are just some basic examples. What you're seeing now is, as I talked about, from a mobile first kind of philosophy and device that we're using, we've designed this specifically mobile because we can get it out into the field to make sure that construction workers can access it on their mobile devices, basically anywhere, anytime they've got a proper connection. So what you're seeing here is on the left, you're kind of seeing an administrator view of somebody accessing our course, but you're creating this course, you're logging in, grabbing the module. You can simply do this on a mobile device, which of course is a demonstration, and then launch the course from there. And on the right side, you're actually seeing it in action with them in a landscape view using their finger to pick up.
Click here to learn how to identify your worksite.
To drop that over back and forth to be able to white line that worksite. So again, it comes down to how you design your course, knowing your target audience and what is going to be the most acceptable platform to deliver that training, as well as then designing the scenarios themselves to fit that type of device. Again, you could still take this on a headset, but as you'll see, there's like static buttons on here and stuff that are not really designed.
Identifying your work site is an important first step in the 811 process. no matter what you call it, whether.
Anyway, my apologies. I jumped ahead a little bit accidentally there. So let's just stop here for a second, and I'm going to stop share, and I'm going to move over to some live examples. So can everybody still see my screen here?
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. And hopefully my audio is good, but it kind of sounds a bit choppy on my end as well here, but that's okay. So again, you know, this is actually in scenario. We're going to launch a couple different programs.
Click here to learn how to identify your work site.
So as you can see, you know, we're in a work site, and this is basically, we primarily use the static 360 image to allow that flexibility of moving around the work site, say from here to the excavator in the background. We move around this work site throughout the entire training program so that they get a real feel for operating around a live work site. In this particular case, they kind of figured out how to launch the course, use the course. They kind of move down the street, and they're presented with this video.
Identifying your work site is an
Start. So I'm going to
important first step in the 811 process. No matter what you call.
Second. I think I'm getting audio from the other side here. So this is the intro video here.
The audio is not coming through on that one. I don't know why.
Oh no?
No. And he's got that aggressive audio that's really fun to hear too.
Yeah, here, hang on a second. Sorry, everybody. I think probably what I've done is I've muted the site because so the back there's background music in one of the
Click here to meet Tim Kennedy.
So can you hear that? Did you hear that part?
Yes, we heard it.
All right, let's start this over. It's a pretty short video, everybody.
I'm Tim Kennedy, as a Special Forces sniper, professional MMA fighter, and personal defense instructor. I can attest that safety and preparedness are paramount in getting the job done right. On this virtual job site, we will do things the right way, my way. Here, we'll learn about the importance of being an 811 pro and what safe digging is all about.
You will be on the work site soon, so you should wear protective equipment. There are 5 PPE items in this area. Search around and find all these items. When you find one, click on it and then search for the next item.
So in this case, somebody mentioned it earlier, we actually philosophy of trying to.
Hey Jay, you might want to mute the tab now.
Thank you. Tab muted. Better?
Yes, now we can hear
Thank
you.
you for saving me. I appreciate it. Is that, you know, we really wanted to guide the user throughout. So every kind of interaction or definition element, it kind of shifts them so they're looking in a specific area to kind of help guide them to the areas that we want them to go. Because what we found in initial testings, especially on this big construction site, is people were lost. Not necessarily lost, but you know, which way do I go? And they're moving around everywhere. And it just took a little bit longer for them to find where they wanted to go. So we, especially on a mobile device or tablet, we wanted to eliminate that. So basically it shifts them to where they want to help guide them. So in this case here, this is just a simple drag and drop. I mean, this is pretty elementary, or actually it's not even drag and drop. This is just a click to find. You get a check mark when you find all the correct PPE items. And this is I think the only part of the course where you're not really guided, because really you're just sitting around in a circle looking for things. It's not that difficult. But again, it gets them used to the functionality of the course itself. Once you find all the PPE, then you're going to move on to the next part of the course. And of course, then we get hotspots, which take you to whichever area in the program this is going to go. In this case, it goes to our client's headquarters, where you're going to meet the executive director and his team, where he talks about their role in the process of protecting utilities, like overhead power lines. I think I heard somebody mention earlier about like how this applies to power lines. Damage prevention in utilities, they're not all underground; they're above ground too. Many of the kind of high voltage power lines in California and Nevada actually run underground. And you see a lot of them above here, but they actually run underground. And that's, of course, like the video, that was a live electrical line beneath the surface of the ground that Cliff hit. So that's kind of our first example of a simple way that our learners are presented with interacting with this work site. And then we'll move on to the next one. All right, so the next one, as we talked about earlier, was, a drag and drop, where we're trying to train the learner on how they're supposed to pre-mark the ground prior to kind of initiating the call to the service that locates and marks the underground utilities in that area. And what we call that is pre-marking. So now there's no audio here because, again, there's no sense in doing it. So we're basically giving them a bit of instruction, what you're supposed to do. So if we were supposed to be excavating the center of the street, we're just somewhere off the strip in Vegas here. I don't even know. John, you probably know better where we are in this particular case, maybe not. But the reality is that, we really just want to drive home what the marks are supposed to look like when they put them on the ground. Just to simplify the process because when you do this, you're actually immediately, as soon as you put paint in the ground and contact 811, you're involved in a legal process where you're supposed to do this, then you're supposed to contact 811, and then somebody will come out and locate, mark the utilities in that specific area. So that's why the importance of pre-marking. And then, of course, when you pre-mark a work site, you have to put your company identifier in there. So we allow them, so this is all triggering. Every time they move something, they trigger, it's triggering audio. When we move that last one in there, of course, it's talking about DigCo and how that, like the best practice around what they're supposed to do there. And then, of course, they're here in this work site. So it's a very, very kind of unique to our industry specific piece of training that we have to deliver to them. And you'll notice here on the left is that we've got, 30% through the course. So we've created this kind of heads up display for the user. So that he or she knows where they are in the program and how much they might have left, because we had a lot of feedback on that too, that people were like, well, how long is this going to take, because they could be in this environment for a long time. And then, of course, some quick Q&A, and again, there's all audio here as well, but I've just taken it out for the benefit of this presentation. Again, they get an opportunity to select the correct response, which it gives them positive or negative feedback depending on what they select. So that's just a simple interaction there. So the next example I'll share with you is probably one that I haven't showed before. So again, we're in a different part of the work site now. We're here. There's an excavator. We're kind of working under some sewer and water lines on a different street in Las Vegas. We've got this hydrovac truck here, which is a hydro excavator. And then, of course, a mechanical excavator in the background. We've just taken the learner through a journey. They've watched a video. They've answered a few questions about, when they can start digging, because really that's a big topic. So when I pre-mark the site, when I contact the number I'm supposed to phone to get the utilities marked, how long do I have before I can actually legally begin to excavate? So we've given all this information. Again, watch the video. We've asked them some questions. They've got the reinforcement. Now we're created what's kind of like a simple way, or kind of a unique way. I wouldn't say simple because it's pretty complicated the way this was built out, but how to test them on that and provide additional reinforcement before we move them on again to answer some more questions. So it's like here, it's a question. So again, I might unmute this for 1 second.
Ticket. Please click on a date.
Again, we're saying, Thursday the 23rd, 7 a.m. is when I want to start working. That's my team. My crew's going to be out there to do this. What day should I ticket, I have to pick it. So this is my thing, right? I've got this calendar overlaid over top of it. Fully, now I got to pick a date. So I'm gonna say, well, I'm a proactive guy. I want to phone on the 2nd.
Your planned start date is too far away. These dates are outside of the 14 calendar day window. Please try again.
And we're like, oh, okay, I can't do that. Oh, okay, well, okay, I guess I started the 23rd, but I'll just phone on, I don't know, Tuesday.
Submitting your ticket on these days would not leave enough time for the 2 working day notice. Please try again.
Because that leaves us like obviously one solution here, but we've given them an opportunity to pick any one of these answers, any date on it. They could notice this answer, and let's say I'll put it on 10th.
Correct. Submitting your ticket on any one of these dates would be in compliance with the 2 working day legal notice. Remember, the minimum notice is 2 working days, not including the day you submit your ticket. There's also a maximum time frame of 14 calendar days.
Okay, so that's a really cool one because, again, it's all compliance related. As you can tell, there's a lot of law around how you excavate. Again, there's no mandatory requirement for training, but you'll see there's a lot that they need to understand before they can begin excavating. Again, here's where we move to a different area of the scene or of the site. This one here, if anybody speaks Spanish, this one is just an example because this course we've created in both English and Spanish because there's a lot of Spanish-speaking folks in California and Nevada. So we have 2 different ways that they can access this program. Of course, this is the Spanish version. So I did this in my last presentation, just an example, so you can hear the Spanish as well as see the interaction. So in this case, we're on this like in the middle of the desert, really, on an excavation project where we got some foundation work going on in the background, lots of activity. And what we're talking about is the color code, which is the colors that utility operators use to designate their type of utility. So each utility has different color. And so we're training the excavator to understand what utility is what color. Actually, we've given them a bunch of information already, so they should know this by now. This is just a quick test of what color goes with which utility. And then, so this is gonna start. So again, this is just I muted it because it got some Spanish voiceover going in the background. So we're basically talking about what's called the uniform color code and why it's there, what it's utilized for, and so on and so forth. And it's going to push me around to the next area here really quick.
We have a question. It says, how do you get to access to these locations and the proper releases?
In terms of like getting to this specific location on this part of the worksite, like inside of the training package, or
not sure. Just maybe just the locations themselves, like you know, getting out to these places. And do you need any proper permits and things like that?
Oh, well, that's a great question. So this is why. So our client, their head office is in California. But why this was shot in Nevada was that no utility operators. I wouldn't say no. When we're talking about excavation related activities around utilities, it's a very there's a lot of liability. If in fact you're filming a live excavation and somebody gets injured on your crew, or there's an injury to their crew because of a film crew, or there's a rupture of a pipeline or sever of a fiber optic, there's a lot of problems. So you can imagine the lawyers that get involved with these types of these builds. I mean, there's teams of them that are looking at this. And so you do, in this case, we didn't need permits, but we needed permission from the utility operator. And all footage they captured had to be submitted to them first and completely vetted. They removed anything that they didn't want and left us with what was acceptable, if that helps. And we just recently did this in Chicago as well, where we had to, everything we recorded, we basically put it on a separate drive, gave it to the client, and it took them, almost a month to verify that footage because there's thousands of images and thousands of videos that they had to review. So again, it's a process, but that, you always want to protect yourself and your team as well as your clients. So make sure you have those documents in place prior to starting. So hopefully that helps. So now we're on this this work site here. So again, we've got We're searching for flags. So this, of course, we just talked about this in one of the previous things I demonstrated, which is white lining the work site. This is an example. So you pick the white flag. It gave them a real life example of what a white marking might look like. And then here now we have different colors. So it's simple. It's information that's very important to these guys that they need to understand, where they have to pick up the color coded flag, drop it on the target, and then it's going to give an example of what that might look like on a work site, as well as giving them audio feedback of what that is. Again, let's go to electric, because we had that powerful video at the very beginning, which of course, again, this is what lines would have looked like on the ground. The paint on the ground would have looked like prior to that gentleman unfortunately hitting that underground power line, which of course almost killed him. So again, if he would have seen that paint on the ground, or would have been trained on what that paint meant or what that color meant, he might not have dropped his jackhammer there, right? And again, this is another example of the gas line markings on a utility site. So again, there's different ways that information is presented. And one of the most important underrated utilities that we talk about is fiber optic or communications line, which is orange, which seem to be getting put in every corner of the globe right now for communications, internet, and things like that. It's the primary driver of a lot of industry out there. So that's what that would look like. So that's an example of that type of interaction. I know we're running out of time. So a couple of things I want to show too is, again, most of the stuff that we create is designed specifically for, again, mobile device and tablet, because again, it's the industry that we serve. So in this case, we're talking about work site orientation and safety, and we're going through electrical hazards, fall protection, lockout, tagout, all these different things. So we create these kind of these menus and interactive things that for users to play around with as they kind of move around to the different modules. But really what I want to highlight here is, again, we have different ways for them to access. This is just the beginning of this course where we talk about the duration, the language, and then what's included in the course. But as you can see, we are using these a lot, these kind of heads-up display kind of tools which gauge the percentage completion of each of those modules, where at any moment they can click on this, which pulls up their menu, which allows them to figure out what they're taking, what they haven't done yet, and then kind of monitors their progress throughout. So the further they get in the module, of course, this 20%, 30%, 40%, which is one of the unique things we like to do. One of our users, or our users really enjoy, so it gives them real-time feedback, how much I have left, so they can gauge their time in space. And again, all that information and analytics reports back to our LMS, so we can kind of gauge when they're finished each of these modules. Because again, it's a challenge in itself, but of course, as long as we can compartmentalize training in a module itself, the module shows complete, and you move on to the next one. That's kind of an interesting one. And then lastly, I thought I'd show this one. This is a driver safety program that we built. You may recognize that bearded individual in the back, or you may not, because I'm completely barefaced right now. But again, this is what we did was this is an example before we actually built the course, but of driver safety in construction. Obviously, it's a huge problem where we have accidents happening with people who get issued the vehicles. So, let's say Jay here, this good-looking bearded fella here, he gets issued this brand new shiny truck because now he's a construction superintendent or whatever it is on an excavation site. There's a lot of accidents that happen between mobile equipment, workers, and these trucks, and not to mention the incidents that happen, while they're driving these on the actual road. But what I wanted to show you is the ability to build these really cool menus where, we have their journey through this entire course is, just a creative way to think about it. It's just this vehicle moving from one point to the other throughout the training. So they know where they are, how many milestones they have left before they finish the final destination. So that's kind of that. There's a lot of different cool ways we're using this technology in different ways, trying to kind of push the bar in our space with this product. And I will actually touch on, I think it was the group before us that presented, talking about cost. Now the cost is a challenge because most of all of our clients want us to produce these products to give away for free, because their goal is reducing damages and sending people home safely. So they're trying to get this course into as many hands as possible. So again, overpricing something for this market would be a barrier to even beginning. So we're constantly trying to think of the challenges that we have to create this training, keeping in mind the cost of production, to keep that down, to ensure that we can get these products out to them, and then they can deploy it to their various audiences. So with that, I know we're getting near the end here. I'm just going to flip it back over to questions.
Okay, we answered a few questions along the way. I don't know if we have any more. Does anybody have any questions? You can pop them either into the chat or to the question and answer panel right now, if you have anything. And if not, Jay, I want to thank you. That was, as always, very interesting. It was, you learn a lot. It's just amazing, how much damage and there is done through digging. And I'm part of that. As you know, last time we talked about this, I had somebody digging in my front yard. They were putting in fiber optic in my neighborhood. So going on everywhere.
It is indeed. And just thank you to everybody that's still on here. I know it's been a long, fairly long session, but hopefully you got a little bit from our side of it as well as all those valuable presentations previous to us that had some excellent stuff. So thank you guys.